All right, so welcome everybody to this video episode of the AT Tipscast. I'm joined with my wife.
Hi.
Melissa. And today we are featuring a special interview with Margie or Margaret. What's the best way to, you introduce yourself?
Margie's great, sure. Margie, and the last name is Schmiel.
Schmiel, that's what I was gonna say. I would have had it right. Well, we are partners in that club that most people probably botch our last names.
Right.
So I'm glad. So Margie, you're with the Smithsonian Science Education Center, is that right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
And so what is that? What does that do? What does your job entail? What is that organization? Tell us all about it.
Sure thing. So really before I came to Smithsonian, I sort of pictured it as one giant, maybe marble museum out on, in Washington, D.C. But it's actually 39 museums, research complexes, and centers. And so we're one of those centers, and we're the only center that's focused exclusively on formal education. So all of the museums, all of the research centers have got components that look at informal education, ways to connect with enthusiasts, teachers, and students. But the Smithsonian Science Education Center is dedicated 100% to K-8 teachers, students, and classrooms.
Gotcha, K-8, interesting.
Wow.
Okay, so not high school.
We do some programs occasionally with high school, but our biggest priority really is at the sort of elementary and middle school level. And that comes from our history. We started in about 1985, and we were a partnership organization that sort of sprung out of Smithsonian and the National Academies of Science. And we had a special focus on elementary education because, as you guys probably know, elementary teachers are typically experts in literacy or math, developmental psychology, that sort of thing. But they don't, there aren't a lot of them that have a lot of expertise or time to have prepared to teach science. So our organization kind of came around in order to assist those teachers when they find themselves teaching science.
Cool, okay. So you, so what are some of the ways you help the teachers in general?
Yeah, there are a bunch of ways. I mean, our primary focus is on what we call inquiry-based science education, which the sort of quick way to understand it is that we believe that children teach science the way that scientists do science. I saw an article very recently posted that advocated for teaching science the way that we would teach a sport or dance or, figure skating, and that's that you never sit down and, learn how to read how to do a triple axel and then, go at it. That's not how we
do it.
Exactly. You have to do it. And actually the way that that a lot of the research is talking about it now is that they really talk about the practices of science. And practices is such a great term because it really emphasizes the fact that you cannot separate the learning from the doing. And it also emphasizes the fact that it's something that you need to grow better at all the time. So that's sort of, again, when we started in 1985, that was our big thrust, was to really raise awareness around why it's important to teach science the way that science is done. And in order to do that, teachers need a lot of support. So we don't focus on just the curriculum materials and just the professional development. That's certainly something that we do. And the Good Thinking series is part of that. But we actually focus a lot on leadership development because none of this is happening if you don't have principals and superintendents that support teachers in doing this, that support them getting the materials that they're going to need to do this. And we also focus a lot on community development as well, because a lot of times, as I'm sure you guys know, teachers and not teachers, but principals and superintendents will come and go. They've got initiatives that they start and then restart and then do different ones. So it's really important for us to have a community base, and that usually involves local companies, local businesses, as well as academics, different institutions, and parents as a key to be the people that are in there, really advocating for their students to learn science in this way.
Okay, so you touched on the primary reason what we're talking about today. The interview is about the Good Thinking web series, The Science of Teaching Science, right? So tell us about that series. What is it? How did it come about?
Absolutely. So our unit was part of a 5-year investing in innovation grant with Department of Education, where we were implementing our sort of model for science education reform in 3 different regions: rural North Carolina, northern New Mexico, and Houston Public Schools. And we did a lot of really in-depth professional development with the teachers there. So we would introduce them to sort of give them a rough idea of what their curricular materials are going to be during a week in the summer. And then we brought them back the next week in the summer, and we got really in-depth at sort of an adult learning level about the science behind what they were doing. So even though you're learning about, even though you're teaching second graders, we're still going to get into static electricity, at this level that we know that you, as an adult learner, can understand, even though your students might not necessarily be doing it. And when I first saw that training, it was actually my first year at the Smithsonian Science Education Center, and I was really blown away by how deep and meaningful that professional development was, because they were getting into things that, I had taught. I had done a master's degree, and then I went and did a full-time graduate degree and got to study with people that did some of the pioneering research on things like conceptual change. And it wasn't until then that I was learning the stuff that I was watching these elementary school teachers getting as part of their professional development over the summer. So I was really blown away with how valuable and wonderful that was.
Yeah, cool.
But so one of the problems, of course, is that in a lot of these districts, there's certainly teacher turnover. Either they leave the profession or they go to a different school, or you'll have spent a lot of time doing professional development for a teacher that is about to go to second grade and then finds out the week before school starts that she's in fifth grade. So there was this tremendous need, and there's sort of the surface level of what we do, the kind of like how to with curriculum, that is one thing, because you can sort of pick that up as you go. Any skilled teacher can pick that up as they go. But these sort of deeper things where we were getting into the scientific research behind how to teach science very well, that is stuff that's typically locked up in a journal, and the teachers got this week to talk about it with their peers. But what happens when you don't have that?
Right.
What does it look like to have that content available? And so that's where we kind of really started thinking about, well, how do we make that level of thing available to someone that didn't have the opportunity to spend a week learning about it?
Yeah. And so you thought, hey, a web series will do it, because people can then look at that video whenever they want, and then share it with each other and learn from it on their own.
Yeah, I mean, so web was kind of an obvious answer, because for all the reasons that you mentioned, it's evergreen, it's always online, you can access it whenever you need it, and people increasingly have access to that, on their phone if they're taking public transportation or whatever. But then a couple of other questions and layers started to get peeled back, which is, how do we make it something that's engaging, doesn't feel preachy, and we also know that there are a lot of resources out there. So we know, for example, that there might be some good TED Ed videos that are sort of straight from the researcher's mouth, and they're presenting it and delivering it beautifully, but it's a speaker that's talking about things. So we started thinking about what are some of the values that we can add. And my background is that I'm a chemistry teacher. And so I've always spent a lot of time thinking about how to marry the macro and micro worlds together when I talk to people. My specialty is in a science that's essentially invisible. And so animation has always been an intriguing way for me to communicate these ideas, because you can have, you can talk about the particulate nature of matter, and, atoms getting excited as they're getting heated and moving faster, and at the same time, have a kettle or whatever blowing steam, and then start to marry some of those ideas together. So we figured with animation, our boundaries would be completely wide open. If we wanted to talk about black holes, we could talk about black holes.
Yes.
And likewise, some of the metaphors that we use, like a conceptual ecology and looking at a child's mind as an ecosystem, are things that could be conveyed in a very lovely way in animation that otherwise would be limited.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so just a couple of things there that I completely agree with, right? Is that just today I came home telling Melissa, she's like, well, how was your day? And I said, yeah, I watched this YouTube video today on an introduction to something I have to review. And I was looking and I was going, it's so dry and boring. And it's like, why does education have to be that way, right? And so when you look at the Good Thinking web series, it's completely the opposite of that. It's completely engaging. Second thing you mentioned was like, okay, there's lots of good science videos out there with good content. You mentioned like TED videos, but typically those are especially the TED videos, they might be like 18 minutes long, right? And so length is a concern, because especially if you're working in a K-8 environment, like I always say 8 is enough. Like the first thing you do when you look on YouTube is not see what the content is, but you see how long.
Yeah.
More than 8 minutes, chances are I'm going to check out. You know what I mean? Yes. So how long are your typical videos?
I think typically they get about 7 minutes. They did start getting long, you know, because and that was something that we were really conscious about. And we had to do a lot of winnowing and sifting because we were trying to get a lot of science content in there, and we were pretty ambitious as well. So we worked with a company called Fable Vision Studios, and they do a lot of educational media. They have expertise in writing for animation, and they've actually had someone on staff that won an Emmy for writing for television. And so there was a lot of back and forth because we would give them outlines and some scripts that delivered the science content, and then they would come back and I think more than just
jazz it up,
right? Yeah, but make it compelling, make it intriguing. You know, force us to give, not force us, but encourage us to give, you know, the different inanimate objects personalities, and think that through and think about how to make it intriguing. So you start to really pack a lot of content in now, because you know you've got character motivations and storylines and science and pedagogy all getting layered in there.
Yeah, totally.
And so I teach, I team teach because I'm in special ed, but I team teach in a conceptual physics class. And last year I team taught with a chemistry class as well. And so I looked at these from my point of view as I use these. And I was totally taken with the very first one that I looked at, because of course I'm choosing things, energy, because that's what we do in physics. So I was totally taken immediately. It captures you immediately. But I noticed a diverse amount of topics. Mm-hmm. How did you choose those topics? Because they cover quite a few different sciences as you get into high school, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we knew that we wanted to focus on misconceptions. And one of the women that I work with, her name is Jean Flanagan, and she actually worked at the American Association for the Advancement of Science when they were cataloging a lot of the most commonly held misconceptions that children had. So she had direct, you know, sort of encyclopedic knowledge of all the stuff that we knew were major misconceptions. But what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to say, hey, kids have this crazy idea. What are you going to do? You know, we wanted to make sure that we targeted places where we also had research about how to work with those misconceptions and strategies that could be implemented. So those were the sort of content topics that we really focused on. And then we also focused on some more general pedagogy ones that we felt like were ones that kind of, in our mind, inhibited sort of a successful execution of science teaching. And so one that, it's weird, I've gotten a ton of positive feedback on, but I actually am starting to hear some negative feedback on the one that we did on learning styles.
Oh no, I love that one.
You love that one. That one was great.
Right.
You nailed it.
I feel like if you guys are running your own podcast, then we're on the same page with that one. But I mean, I think that's the only negative YouTube comment that we have right now, where the person, you know, was felt like it wasn't fair to just sort of dismiss them out of hand. But we've been really meticulous about whenever we say something, we make sure, first of all, that it's pulled straight out of research papers. So these aren't our opinions. That would be a different show, maybe someday. But but so these are straight out of, you know, research papers. And then in many cases, again, this is what Jean had led the effort on, was finding the researchers who did that work and having them look at our script with the jokes and everything to kind of go through and make sure that, you know, we're representing things fairly. So, you know, things like learning styles. We've got another one that I did a little bit of work on that's coming out shortly on right brain versus left brain and getting past that myth, because it's another one where we feel can be destructive sometimes, where students will write themselves off and think, well, I'm a creative person, I can't possibly love science.
Exactly.
And then my heart breaks into a million pieces. Because science is very creative, and, you know, and creative writing is very analytical. So not only are those stereotypes not true, but the science doesn't bear out either. And then things like motivation that's another one that'll be coming out pretty soon, actually, on PBS Learning Media. which is one that we think will have appeal to, parents as well.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those more general kind of developmental psych pieces.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. There's, 7 videos currently at the time of this recording. How many more do you have planned out?
We have a total of 15 that'll be coming out through the end of December of this year.
Okay, and any plans beyond that, or?
No, we've got a topic list that's much bigger than that and a lot of things that we'd love to do. But yeah, we're sort of looking around for resources to be able to continue the series.
So speaking of resources and me being a teacher, I mean, I started in elementary, so
yeah.
I taught 4th and 5th grade, and I taught 2nd as well. But I love it. I love the series. I love the whole idea of it. Are there lesson plans or, curriculum guides coming out with it? Do you have any plans for that?
Any other instructional materials?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, I think we kind of need to learn more about how it's working for teachers, I think, to be really effective. So what we're starting by doing is putting together some just discussion guides, because one of the places that we feel like this might fit in are for people's professional learning communities, or whatever the different names are for those around schools, but teachers sort of talking together and learning together. So that's where we're getting started, is just getting these discussion guides out there, and then we kind of want to learn, sit back and learn and see what else we can do to make these more effective.
Right. I can definitely see these in the classroom being, a great supplemental material to back up what you're saying, and just in another media, another voice.
Yeah, the way videos are being used in classrooms nowadays are actually, obviously they're used in classrooms like traditionally they have been, but there's this whole idea of the flipped classroom where students would watch the video ahead of time and then come in and discuss it, because it is so accessible now. And these fit perfectly into that. It'd be a perfect homework assignment would be to watch this video with your parents. It'll take you a whole 10 minutes to do. Yeah.
We have one episode that's coming out on metacognition where Miss Reyes, the main character, is struggling to think about her students' misconceptions. So she goes on whatever we called it, like SchoolTube, and pulls up a video. So we went really meta with that episode to talk about metacognition, because we assume that teachers would use this with their kids, and I think we want to learn more about what that means. I know one of the concerns that was raised for us was, well, if you talk about misconceptions, isn't that going to cause misconceptions to fester? But right, thanks.
You're clearing them up.
Right.
So that's the thing for students. They need to be able to confront these ideas head on and see, how they're thinking about things, particularly in a way that's non-threatening. So if you're watching a video and you see a child on the video misunderstanding something, and knowing, what the misunderstanding is, and then working through it yourself, you're not the only one that had that feeling, and you never even had to cop to it. So.
Absolutely.
You had mentioned that you guys were interested in learning how teachers are using it. How would you want them to communicate that to you? I mean, I'm definitely, I have a plan of already how I'm going to use 2 of your videos in conceptual classroom.
Yeah.
And they're not, and let me just put that out there, that I know that you say it's K-8, but these are great to be silly with. Sometimes your high schoolers need that brain break, and so it's just a great way to break it down. How would you want the teachers to communicate that to you? I mean, if I'm going to communicate it back to you and say, hey, this is how I used it today. Well, how would
we're very hands-on, and I always say, for a Smithsonian unit, we're small but mighty. So honestly, all of our emails are online on our website. And we always look at our comments. And so if anyone ever wants to get in touch with us, absolutely go to our homepage, send us an email, tell us what you're thinking. We'll probably come back at you with a bunch of questions. So you can be as involved or uninvolved as possible after you give us that suggestion, as much as you want. But yeah, we do want to hear from people, and we want to do things that work. I mean, this was us trying something new, so again, we need feedback. We thought it was a good way to go, based on the fact that a lot of us are former teachers, and knowing what we want, what our friends want, and what the people that we've been working with for all these years said they needed. But kind of what happens next is definitely something that we still want to learn more about.
That's great.
Well, I'll put these links and everything into the blog post, and it goes along with this to the podcast episode. But just to say it, verbally, well, how do people get in contact with you in general? Where do they find this web series?
Sure. So our homepage is scienceeducation.si.edu, and you can go over to our resources page there, and if they live there, you can please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also looking at posting the videos in a bunch of other video platforms like Vimeo. Of course, we're getting started on launching something with PBS Learning Media, so that a lot of our stuff will be there along with the other fantastic resources they have. And if people have an idea for other places where we should be making these available because of your firewalls or whatever, let us know. We've got these. We want them to be used and useful. So.
Okay, awesome.
This has been wonderful.
Yeah, Margie, we're so excited. I mean, we
Yeah.
love the videos. Absolutely love them.
And I'll be in touch with you.
Please do. Yeah. No, we would love that, especially with your expertise. I hope you do follow up. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the metacognition one.
Yeah.
And
But keep it up. I mean, this is exactly what education needs. So
yeah, absolutely.
thanks for all you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Margie. We'll talk to you later.
All right, take care. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.